This hour of the Costa Report is brought to you by IBM. Big data at the speed of business.
Welcome to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and thank you for joining me for another 2 hours of Straight Talk Radio. Before we get the program started today, I want to welcome members of our armed forces who are joining us from remote locations over the internet. Thank you for being with us again. In just a moment, acclaimed primatologist Jane Goodall will be here to talk about the effects development by nations such as China is having on natural habitats in Africa, as well as her deepening connection with the plant life which supports and protects all living creatures, a love affair chronicled in her book Seeds of Hope. But before Ms. Goodall joins us, as is my custom each week, let me tell you a little about her background. Valerie Jane Morris Goodall was born in London, England. Her father was an engineer and her mother an accomplished novelist. Goodall's love of primates can be traced back to a stuffed toy chimpanzee which her father gifted her, a fond companion named Jubilee. In 1956, Goodall's dream of seeing animals up close and personal was realized when she saved enough money to visit a friend's farm in Kenya. Soon afterwards, she applied for a position with archaeologist Louis Leakey, who hired her as a secretary. But Leakey had secret plans for Goodall. He believed the study of primate behavior would reveal important clues about our past. But it turned out getting close to chimpanzees without allowing a human presence to influence their behavior was tricky business. In 1960, Leakey secured funding to send Goodall, who was just 26 years old, and who Leakey felt had the right temperament and unbiased perspective, to Gombe National Park to begin work which would forever change the way we view complex primate societies. Leakey was right about Goodall, rejecting scientific methods which interfered with understanding chimpanzee culture. Goodall gave her subjects names and became deeply familiar with each troop member's unique personality. By taking an unconventional approach, she dispelled many myths we held about chimpanzees. For example, the idea that only humans could construct and use tools, and that chimpanzees were peaceful vegetarians. And the more she learned and reported and wrote about her observations, the more the world took notice. In 1977, Goodall established the Jane Goodall Institute, and in 91, the successful Roots and Shoots youth program, aimed at protecting animals and their habitats. She's also the former president of Advocates for Animals and acts as an advisor and inspiration to a long list of animal and environmental advocacy groups. In 2002, Goodall was named a United Nations Messenger of Peace, and 2 years later, she was bestowed with the title of Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire. Her list of scientific acknowledgments exceed the time we have on our program today, so let me just conclude by saying that just last week, Ms. Goodall celebrated her 80th birthday. It's my pleasure to welcome to the program legendary primatologist and author Jane Goodall. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Goodall.
Thank you.
Now, some of the worst estimates claim that we are losing 27,000 plant, animal, or insect species every year. And though the number and the rate is hard to pinpoint, all experts agree that we're eradicating species at an unprecedented rate with little regard for how the habitat is affecting human species. So it's one thing to talk about the habitat of other animals, but what, in your view, is really driving this mass destruction?
Well, there are different causes, I think, but certainly in the affluent countries, it's the unsustainable standard of living of so many people. You know, we're actually using non-renewable natural resources as though they were infinite, and they're not. And we are robbing so many environments around the world in order to sustain our, not our need, but our greed in a way. That's on the one hand. On the other, you have the crippling poverty, because if you're really poor, you're going to have to cut down the last of the trees to try and grow food, or to get charcoal to try and get some money to feed your family. War, where refugees go trampling through huge areas of the habitat, and at the end it's as though a swarm of locusts has been through. And then finally, underlying everything is human population growth and the way that we are spreading out ever further into the natural world.
You really crystallize the three major motivating factors. Obviously, we are a lot like locusts. I hate to use that analogy, but wherever we go, we wreak destruction of our habitat. And yet, does this indicate that we no longer associate ourselves with nature? Because that is the very habitat on which our species, the human species, depends also, not just other animals, insects, and plants.
Yeah, I think I am deeply concerned by the fact that we are continually dissociating ourselves with the natural world. There are studies that show that for a child's good psychological development, they need green things, they need to be in touch with nature. And, of course, for some children, it's very difficult. Inner city kids, it's jolly hard for them to be in touch with nature, but we can try and make that happen for them. And then, there's this really reliance on a virtual world rather than a real world. So you can go and look at everywhere you like on your little computer screens or on your TV. And people will not take care of and love what they don't really understand.
That's so true. If we don't feel a connection, then we don't understand the emotion that's associated with protecting something. We have to feel that emotional connection. And you mentioned the virtual world versus the natural world. It almost seems in our society today that there's a narrowing that's taken place. Everywhere we go, we hear that all our problems are economic or political in nature. And we don't, it seems like the third leg of the stool, the biological issues that have to do with the human race and a sustainable habitat for everyone, for all living species, that just keeps getting swept under the rug. How can we disconnect from the very things that on which our survival depends?
I think that there is greater awareness. I mean, more and more people now believe that while there may be cycles of heating and warming on the planet, obviously there have been, but that this current warming of the surface of the globe is leading to change that is extremely rapid. And you've only got to look at this last winter to say, well, is Mother Nature trying to tell us something? With the worst winter on the east coast of North America, the wettest winter we've ever had in the UK. So and
the driest we've ever had on the west coast of the United States.
Driest on the west coast, and the hottest in Australia and parts of sub-Saharan Africa. So, the worst typhoon ever to hit land that devastated the Philippines. Something is happening. Climates are changing. There is none of the old rhythm anymore, and it's very clear that it's human activities that have caused this rapid change, comparatively speaking.
Mm-hmm. Now, deforestation, development, climate change, it all seems to be conspiring, and yet you make the point in your book, Seeds of Hope, that nature is tough and the will to live is strong. You cite some of the trees which survived atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki when everything else was destroyed.
Yes, and also that wonderful tree called Survivor who survived the crashing of the Twin Towers, and is now back proudly blooming in the spring on ground zero. That's a magical story, and it's not only the survival of the tree, but the way it was nurtured back to life from a couple of black boughs and a few black roots. I mean, it's a beautiful story. But, nature cannot go on coming back if we continue to treat nature in this thoughtless way.
Absolutely. There is a limit to the resiliency, but it is a miraculous resiliency, as you point out. We have to take a short commercial break. We'll be right back with more from Jane Goodall. You're listening to the Costa Report.
Did you know that every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, and that 90% of the data in the world today has been created in the last 2 years alone? This data comes from everywhere, and it affects everyone. This data is big data. Big data is all data, and it's more than simply a matter of size. Big data represents an opportunity to uncover new insights, make your business more agile, and answer questions that were previously beyond your reach. IBM's Big Data platform uses sophisticated technologies and patented advanced analytics designed to complement your existing information infrastructure. The IBM Big Data platform allows you to get started quickly today and expand to address more complex problems tomorrow. It doesn't matter where you start, it matters that you start. Find out how IBM can help you turn big data into a competitive advantage by visiting ibm.com/big data today.
Every day our world gets more complicated. Not only is new information coming at us faster than we can manage, new regulations, technology, and the effects of globalization have made it much more difficult to succeed. That's why I wrote The Watchman's Rattle, a book that, for the first time, explains how complexity makes it hard to separate facts from fiction, and eventually causes us to make important decisions based on unproven beliefs. And not just us, our leaders also fall prey to this phenomena. But here's the good news. Once you know the symptoms to watch for, you can safeguard against them. So please, go to RebeccaCosta.com. That's RebeccaCosta.com and order your copy of The Watchman's Rattle. It only takes a few minutes and the shipping is free. That's RebeccaCosta.com. Do it now. You'll be glad you did.
Hey, investors, more breaking news on gold and silver supply. Reports suggest China and India are trying to corner the market on physical gold and silver. Here's Kevin Demerit to report.
Larry, in a recent interview, billionaire fund manager Eric Sprott tells us in 1 month, China bought 85% of physical gold produced and India bought 16% of the physical silver.
Did he say what that could do to their prices?
He said sometime this year, and I quote, the price of gold goes north of $2,000 and silver will quickly go over $50 an ounce.
Can our listeners get this report?
We're glad to send the report. Plus, we'll even send listeners a free 1 gram pure silver bar to show how sincere we are about his prediction.
Folks, for the free report by Eric Sprott and a free 1 gram bar of pure silver, call Lear Capital today at 1-800-646-3410. This is a very limited offer and only available to the first 50 callers, so call now, 1-800-646-3410. That's 1-800-646-3410, 800-646-3410.
Shirt Crafter, your one-stop print shop, has been locally owned and operated in Santa Cruz for a decade, providing custom design services to help you build your brand. Shirt Crafter provides top-of-the-line custom screen printing, digital printing, embroidery, stickers, banners, business cards, and so much more. They carry top-quality brands of gear from T-shirts and polos to sweatshirts and ball caps. Whether you're outfitting your softball team or team building for your business, Shirt Crafter has it all. So build your brand with Shirt Crafter, located at 111 Ingle Street in Santa Cruz, or go to www.shirtcrafter.com. Or you could give them a call at 831-423-0537. That's Shirt Crafter, 831-423-0537.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and my guest today is world-acclaimed primatologist and advocate, Miss Jane Goodall. And before the break, we were talking about how human greed and exponentiating population growth is causing us to ravage the natural resources around the world with similar aggression as clouds of locusts. And we're beginning to see the early consequences of these behaviors in the form of climate change and the eradication of biodiversity. Now, recently, you expressed concerns over development by China in Africa, and you compared China's relationship to Africa to early colonialists, which also once plundered Africa's natural resources. What damage in particular are you witnessing from Chinese investment?
Well, it's not just Chinese. Let's be clear about that. But China has had an extraordinary economic development in the country. I know because I go there quite often. And they need natural resources to feed this growing economy and to build all the houses that people are wanting. And so, they, as we, are getting natural resources from Africa and other countries. And they're just, more of them than there were of us, and there's better technology. So I think they're no worse than we are, but they can do it better than we did because of that. And it's not just China, it's other Asian countries. And still the big American multinationals are doing much the same. So I don't think there's much point pointing fingers. It's a syndrome that's really overtaking the whole world and dividing us into those that are taking and getting and those that are losing and getting poorer.
Mm-hmm. These natural resources are necessary to fuel economic growth of developed countries. As you point in, the conditions for exploitation are already set. When you have a wealthy, developed country coming into an underdeveloped, impoverished country, it's hard for people who are in a desperate economic situation to protect their environments. Even if they had the desire to do so, you have to eat and you have to provide for your families. It seems like the conditions are just ripe for exploitation.
Yeah, so this is why, that I realized back in 91, flying over the little Gombe National Park where I've done the chimpanzee studies, which used to be part of a contiguous forest along the east shore of Lake Tanganyika. And when I flew over and looked down, I was utterly shocked. There's a little oasis of forest, that's the national park, tiny one, surrounded by completely bare hills. More people living there than the land could support, over-farmed, infertile soil, terrible soil erosion, the streams getting silted up with the rains. And that's when I realized, unless we improve the lives of the people, unless women become better educated and empowered, unless there is some reduction in family size, and that happens all over the world as women's education improves, then we can't even try to protect the chimpanzees in their forest home. So the Jane Goodall Institute works really hard to get the people as partners, and it's working. So around Gombe now, thanks to the villagers' cooperation, we have a buffer zone, and within 10 years the trees were 30 foot high, they just regenerated, and the chimps have 3 times more forest than they had when this started. So again, it is possible. You can grow more food on a small amount of land if you do it the right way. Small family farms, organic, feeding the local population.
You can reverse the destruction, no question about it, and your institute has performed some what I consider to be miracles.
Yeah, miracles.
It's quite spectacular what has been done in recent times. But there's also an irony here, and the irony is that countries, let's just take China, for example, between 2000 and 2011, they invested $73 billion in oil wells, mining, other projects in Africa. And with these investments, their argument is that they're creating much-needed jobs, roads, housing projects, schools, and they're investing in Africa's infrastructure and correcting, to some extent, the economic inequity there. It's interesting that they use that argument. How do you feel about that?
Well, indeed, development is necessary, and whatever we say, it's going to happen. The thing is that the mining, etc., there are different ways of actually conducting these operations. And to do it in the most environmentally friendly, sustainable way, it costs more. And that, I think, is something that should be built into the equation. You should actually pay when you buy something, for the actual cost of that product. And the actual cost, you have to consider protecting the environment, which costs money.
And that sounds like that's more of a responsibility of the governments, locally and nationally.
Yeah, to demand this kind of concern for the environment and for the future. But, the governments, in most countries around the world, there's corruption. And unfortunately, money can buy cooperation. We know that. It buys it in the United States. It buys it in the UK.
Yeah, well, what is that old saying? Money is the root of all evil. I don't think I realized it till I turned this age.
I know.
Those simple sayings, it turns out there's a reason they've stuck around so long. But you do point out that you have praised the Chinese government for destroying stockpiles of illegal ivory, banning shark fin soup at official functions. There is progress.
Oh, definitely. And, the concern for animal rights is growing, not only in China, but other developing countries as well. So, we are seeing people paying more respect to other animals. And I think things like, Disney's forthcoming Bears film, when you watch that movie and you see these brown bears in Alaska, people are going to want to protect them and that beautiful, amazing landscape. So as we get divorced from the natural world, if we can have films like this, make us have some feeling of empathy and connection. And then maybe more people will get out there and really experience it and really fall in love.
It's funny that you brought up Disney's upcoming film about the bears, because I remember when March of the Penguins was released to national theaters, and I thought, how is this going to work? This is a nature film. And, of course, it was a smashing hit. People lined up to take their children to that film.
Yeah. Well, I hope they will to this one, because it's going to help the national park, especially if people go in the first week. And I've been there. I went there. And I met some of the bears that are in the film, the mother and her cubs. And, there's such incredible footage in that film. I love it.
Oh, there is. And I will tell you that even though everyone cannot travel to a location to have, a intimate contact with animals, when you do see a film like that, it can't help but bring out the very best in us. So I do hope people will go see that film. We have to take another break, but stay right where you are. We'll be back after these important messages from our sponsors. You're listening to the Costa Report. One of my new customs is to put open bottles of red and white wine on my table so my guests can serve themselves. But not just any wine. In my home, I want to serve the best, and that's wine from Caraccioli Cellars. So this year, I asked winemaker Scott Caraccioli for a suggestion on what I should serve.
Come dinner time, it's always a good idea to have a bottle of nice Chardonnay as well as Pinot Noir on your table. That way you have a selection for every guest that walks through your door. But the best way to start the evening is definitely with a bottle of bubbles, preferably Brut Rosé, to really get the celebration in the mode of the holidays.
Oh, you're absolutely right. There's something about the bubbles that gets everybody going.
Yeah, it's really an infusion of happiness.
That's a great way to put it. So I'll start with the bubbles and then move on to the red and white on my table, and then I'll have everyone covered.
Unless people want to keep going with the bubbles, which I always advise.
Okay. Thanks, Scott.
Come to Severina's on Easter Sunday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. for our champagne brunch buffet. Enjoy traditional brunch favorites and Easter specialties. Succulent prime rib, honey glazed ham, gourmet omelets, waffles, desserts, even a chocolate fondue fountain, and a balloon artist for the kids. All this for just $40 per adult, $15 for kids 6 through 10, and children 5 and under eat free. To make your reservations, call 688-8987. We hope to see you here, and happy Easter.
My name is Debbie, and I'm from Aptos. About 4 years ago, I remodeled my house, and it was professionally decorated. I wanted it to look like a magazine inside, so of course, the end was beautiful plants. But how am I going to take care of them? So I called Jungle Plant, and Dale gave me a fabulous estimate. She comes in faithfully every week, waters, dusts, fertilizes, takes such great care of my indoor plants, and believe me, I have 15 of them, everything from large ficus to beautiful orchids. She's totally professional, trustworthy. She comes in when I'm not there. I really depend on her to keep things looking great, and she's become my really good friend. She's really knowledgeable about plants, knows where to put them so that they thrive, and if something goes wrong, she replaces the plants. My plants are a big part of my home decor, and I love looking at them and feeling something alive and green. So thanks to Jungle Plant, my home is complete.
So give Jungle Plant a call at 462-5806 or visit jungleplant.com.
Hi, this is Ethan Behrman, a host on the ZBS Radio Network, and I'd like to introduce you to the all-new ZBSradio.com. ZBS Radio brings you a variety of talk radio programming on subjects like health and nutrition, politics, personal finance, gardening, pet care, technology, and so much more. At ZBSradio.com, you'll find podcasts as well as live and on-demand streams of exciting and informative talk radio programming that's available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on your computer or mobile phone. Listen on the web using our streaming player or in your iTunes or other listening software. Also, be sure to check the app section of our website to find mobile apps that make listening to your favorite shows even easier. Check the shows page at zbsradio.com to see our current lineup of shows. New shows will be added all the time. Thank you for listening to the ZBS Radio Network.
It's The Way of Love Live, the variety show committed to bringing you positive stories and life-affirming messages.
Combined with enough inspirational music and satirical comedy to make it worth everyone's while.
Together we focus on the most important issues of the day by exploring informed and enlightened approaches wherever we can find them.
Using serialized fiction, we bring to life great stories from the past and sci-fi possibilities of the future.
Join us every Saturday, 5 to 7 p.m. for
It's The Way of Love Live.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and my guest today is Dr. Jane Goodall. And in the previous segment, we were both expressing excitement about Disney's new movie about the bears, which is being released nationwide next week. Which brings me to a question that I've been wanting to ask you for many years, and that is the continued tendency of the scientific community to be judgmental, I guess is the word I'd use, about subjective observations. You encountered this when you decided to name your chimpanzee subjects, and you acknowledged their individual personalities, and that I don't know that that's changed a lot since those days. I'm a sociobiologist by training, and I've come under considerable criticism for observational science and simply noting patterns of behavior. What is that about?
Well, I don't know. There is this, I think, a fallacy to assume that you can only do good science if you're objective, and that to be objective, you must have no empathy with your subject. I'm talking obviously about observing animals now, but maybe we can count trees in here from all I've learning about their communication abilities. But anyway, I don't believe this. I believe that you can be 100 objective in your mind, even though you are empathizing with and feeling sorry for some victim of aggression or something like that. I know you can do it because I've done it. And I think to deny any feeling of empathy with a being that's as like us as chimpanzees would actually have deprived me of a way of asking the right questions. Okay, I think she's behaving this way because she's feeling grief at the loss of her child. Okay, now we can start investigating, do chimpanzees grieve? How is it the same or different as human grief? This is how I have done my work, and I think the only thing you can say really has changed is that when I began in 1960, you couldn't have studied animal personality, animal mentation, or certainly animal emotion in any university, and now that is happening in many major universities all around the world.
But in some respects, it's still treated as a second-class citizen in the scientific world. And I could not agree with you more. I think when you can empathize, even to the point of empathizing with plant life, as you point out, we're discovering more and more about how plants communicate with each other and with insects and animals and have actually a large range of expression.
I love it. I mean, writing this book, it was a magical journey for me, and I found out so many fascinating things. I met so many incredible people who are working with plants, especially foresters in the forest that I love, where you have this magic interconnection between all living things, and takes us right back to the beginning where you asked about the loss of biodiversity. It's a tragedy. It really is a tragedy.
Now, talk to us a little bit about some of the things you discovered in writing this book about how plants express themselves.
Well, I remember a scientist, and I forget the name, but he proclaimed that trees were putting out chemical messages like pheromones when they were attacked by insect predators, and that as a result, neighboring trees were increasing the toxin levels in their leaves so that this would help to protect them when they too were attacked. And at the time it was poo-pooed and ridiculous, but now it's accepted. Plants, trees can do this. And I think even more totally fascinating is the work done in Jerusalem on peas, ordinary peas that we eat. Mm-hmm. So that a row of peas or 2 rows of peas in a greenhouse were subjected to drought conditions. In other words, they were not watered, and they did all the right things. They curled up their leaves to prevent water loss and so on. And to their amazement, the neighboring rows of peas that were being perfectly watered began to show symptoms as though they too were in drought conditions.
They began to empathize.
Yes, and so when those peas who'd learned, who'd empathized, were subjected to drought conditions along with another row of naive peas, the ones who'd learned survived better than the naive ones. And I mean, this to me is it completely changes the way we think. And then the root systems with those little thread-like fungi that are communicating through the forest deep down under the ground. I love it. I mean, it takes you into another way of thinking about the natural world.
It does, and I will say that when you start learning, it's almost addictive. You want to know more.
Yeah,
more and more and more. There's no end to it. I think the reason I want to live forever is I want to learn the rest of it, the rest of the story.
Yeah, and just think of this bristlecone pine that's lived nearly 4,000 years or 4,000 plus. Just think what that tree has lived through. I mean, isn't that magical?
It's magnificent. And, a tree should never be cut down just because of the experience that it has had that we are not able to dissect at this point in time. The failure is our inability to be able to get to that information or acknowledge or even appreciate it. That is just the lack of human knowledge, but we will get there.
We will, and that's, this is what I always tell students. Don't let people laugh at you if you have a new idea. Don't let people laugh at you for saying, well, maybe I can learn something from a tree's experience. Think what people would have said in 1960 if somebody had come along and said, I want to grant to study the intelligence of the octopus. They would have been scorned, but now this is a big buzz. The octopus turns out to be extremely intelligent.
Yeah, well, I actually have a video up on my website showing 2 octopuses in tanks, neighboring tanks, that they can see each other. And one of them has been trained to remove a lid to get at his food. And the other one comes out and observes the other octopus and learns how. Through observation, learns how to remove the lid of a jar and get to his food.
I know, and the octopus,
spectacular.
The one called Athena, who lives in, I think it's San Diego Aquarium, and the caretakers couldn't understand how in the morning sometimes they'd come in, everything looked as normal, but some fish would have disappeared. So they put up a camera, and they found that when everything was quiet, but not until it was very quiet, Athena would come out of her tank, go across the floor, go into another tank, eat a couple of the fish, and then rather than stay, surrounded by this lovely food, no, she went back and was innocently in her own tank in the morning.
There was actual deception.
Yes.
It was a heist.
I mean, these things, the world is so full of wonder. We have so much to learn. We're destroying it so quickly. We have to stop. We have to change attitudes. That's why I'm so passionate about our program for young people, Roots and Shoots. I'm passionate about it.
Well, let's talk about that in the next segment because we're going to be wrapping up this one. But one thing I did want to bring up is when I was a student, this is back in the 1980s, I remember reading with fascination about these plant juries where they would have a person go into another room and rip up a bunch of plants, destroy and kill them. And then they would have 5 or 10 subjects walk by these plants, perfectly healthy plants, and they would register their electrical activity, toxins, all of this. And when the plant murderer would walk by, every plant would go nuts.
Yeah,
trying to protect itself. Do you remember these plant juries? They were crazy, and people thought I was nuts. And I said, yeah, but we can measure toxins. We can measure that these things are going on. How do you explain 20 people walk by the plant jury and the guilty guy goes by and the plants go nuts?
Yeah.
So we do know that, and as our measurements become more and more precise, it's wonderful that this information gets out into the public. We're going to talk a little bit about how we get this information to children and make them more empathetic to their natural world. We have to take our last break. We'll be right back in just a moment. You're listening to the Costa Report.
Hi, I'm Amy Tobin, cookbook author and culinary expert. Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries. Dole has a bounty of berries ripe for the picking. Fresh berries are not only delicious, but some of the most powerful disease-fighting foods available. Researchers have found that berries have some of the highest antioxidant levels of any fresh fruits. So add a handful or two of your favorite berries to your next meal and enjoy their nutritional benefits and natural sweetness in all of your dishes, from salads to desserts and everything in between. For fresh tips and ideas from Dole's berry experts, visit berries.dole.com. And be sure to check out the pages of mouth-watering recipes. Whether it's a sweet and savory blueberry cranberry chicken salad or a simple strawberry sorbet, Dole has the perfect berry to inspire your next berrylicious dish.
The crisis in the Ukraine is the latest global conflict to pit the United States against Vladimir Putin's Russia. While the Cold War may have ended, U.S.-Russia diplomacy is here to stay. Understanding this volatile new era is not easy. For many years, experts have been trying to explain Russia's new leadership, but cracking the inner circle has remained elusive until now. The American Program Bureau represents some of the most knowledgeable and prominent Russian insiders who are available to speak to your organization. Experts such as Mikhail Gorbachev, former leader of the Soviet Union and master architect of modern-day Russia. Vladimir Posner, the dean of Russian journalism. Andrei Kozyrev, the first foreign minister under Boris Yeltsin. And Pavel Palashchenko, chief advisor for 25 years to Gorbachev, are available to speak at your next event. No Speakers Bureau offers greater insights into how Russia impacts our economy, our world, and our lives. To schedule these esteemed leaders for your next event, contact the American Program Bureau at 800-225-4575 or apbspeakers.com.
Hi, registered pharmacist Ben Fuchs here. I've been studying healthy bodies for 35 years, and what I've got to tell you may shock and surprise you, but if you listen up, it may change your life. There's no element in the body that's more important than iodine, and not just for the thyroid either. As it turns out, all of the glands of the body depend on iodine. The adrenal glands are especially dependent on iodine, and making sure you're getting enough via diet and supplementation can reduce fibrocystic breasts and lower the risk of heart disease too. Iodine is also important for your brain. According to researchers writing in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, iodine deficiency can prevent children from attaining, quote, their full intellectual potential, unquote. Deficiencies in iodine are considered to be the most preventable cause of brain damage in infants and children, and according to the World Health Organization, over 1/3 of kids are iodine deficient. According to the World Health Organization, iodine deficiency in adults can lower IQs by up to 15 points. And considering the average adult IQ is around 90 to 100, and 80 is considered dull, losing 15 IQ points can be pretty significant. Although iodine is one of the most feared and misunderstood of all the nutritional minerals, the fact is iodine is perhaps the safest of all the essential trace elements. Organic nutritional iodine is the only essential trace element that can be used safely for long durations in doses many times higher than the RDA. Iodine is found abundantly in the ocean, and regular consumption of seafood and sea vegetables are a great way to make sure you're getting enough. You can also supplement with Lugol solution, a product called iodoral or its equivalent. You can also use drops of something called nascent iodine, which may be especially effective as a supplemental source. Pharmacist Ben here, urging you to go to kscohealth.com to order Beyond Tangy Tangerine, the Healthy Start Pack, and other nutritional supplements that I personally use and recommend. You can purchase these premium quality products at wholesale prices online at kscohealth.com. That's kscohealth.com. I'm the pharmacist that believes that staying healthy and strong is not only about medicine, it's about giving your body the raw materials it needs to do its work. Go to kscohealth.com. Make sure you check out the cool videos too at kscohealth.com. That's kscohealth.com.
Welcome back to the Costa Report. I'm Rebecca Costa, and my guest today is Dr. Jane Goodall. Your love of animals began when you were a very young girl, and along those lines, your foundation has a children's program called Roots and Shoots. Can you tell us about that program a little bit?
Sure. I began Roots and Shoots in Tanzania in 1991 with 12 high school students who were concerned about, the problems they found in the world around them with health affecting animals and people and the environment. And from that little beginning where we talked about what we might do together came a program with its main message: every individual matters and makes a difference every day. It's a youth-driven program where young people choose themselves 3 projects to make the world better, to help people, animals, and environment. And it now has members of all ages, even a few preschoolers, many, many, many universities, anything in the middle. And it's in 136 countries with about 1,600 active groups.
And now, is this Roots and Shoots program fully funded by your foundation?
Well, the main thing is it's grassroots. So,
I see.
Within each country, it's its own entity. And yes, we have we have some funding in the U.S., which is helping, to coordinate some of this. We have funding now for a global office to try and bring together. If we can find a way of showing the cumulative effect of what all these groups are doing, these young people are changing the world. And the reason I'm so passionate about this is, you keep hearing we haven't inherited this world from our parents, we borrowed it from our children, but we've been stealing the future of our children.
Yes.
And, it's time we got together with them to start trying to repay something and help them to move the planet, listen to them, and empower them.
Can you give us an example of maybe one of the programs that the Roots and Shoots group is working on?
Well, one project is in Tanzania is to restore a quarry that was created by a cement company.
Excuse me, Miss Goodall, we're having a little difficulty with a buzzing sound from the phone.
I hear a buzzing.
Do you hear it also?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know. I don't know if it's this end. Nothing changed here.
Can you tap the receiver just a moment and see if that helps? Is that doing anything?
No, it's just buzzing.
Well, you see, I would expect this buzzing if we were calling in from Africa, and here we are in our good old infrastructure in the United States, and it's letting us down.
It was perfect up until...
It was just perfect right on up to that point. I wonder if it's one of our phone lines. No? No. Okay. Well, let's just try to we'll try to continue here. You were mentioning one of the programs that the Roots and Shoots program is working on.
Yes, they're learning how plants can help to restore an area that's been destroyed by quarrying for cement, and watching how the plants gradually creep into these bare surfaces, and then seeds can grow and insects come back and everything gets restored. So that's just one project doing restoration. Sometimes they remove exotics so that, an area can be re-inhabited by indigenous creatures and plants. Sometimes they raise money for a no-kill dog shelter. They've done that in China in a couple of places. Or they may go and visit the elderly who've been abandoned by their families. Or they may grow organic food in their gardens, in their school gardens.
It sounds like they're very localized programs.
Yeah, they are. So when you hear think globally, act locally, if you think globally, you tend to be too depressed to act locally. So these are taking the problems around you and showing that if you roll up your sleeves and get to work, you can actually address those problems and make change. And then knowing that other young people all around the world are doing the same. It suddenly isn't so terrifying to think globally. At the same time, you can raise money to help victims of a far-off country, like after the Japanese tsunami, for example.
Absolutely. That's the beauty, the true beauty of technology in being able to join localized groups and to make them feel optimistic and hopeful that change is possible. We are almost out of time here, but I do want to take a moment to wish you a belated happy birthday and to thank you for your continued advocacy, courage, and insights. Thank you for being with us, Ms. Goodall.
I'm sorry about the buzzing, but...
Well, I'll tell you what, our engineers have worked lots of miracles here in the past, and I have no doubt that they will get rid of that buzzing through the miracle of modern technology. But thank you so much for making time to be with us.
Okay, thanks very much. I enjoyed that interview anyway.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your work. We are deeply grateful.
Oh, thank you. And what is your website with the octopus?
The website is RebeccaCosta.com. And I put up a video every week for our listeners. We have about 3.5 million listeners across the United States, and I put that up each week. And the octopus videotape was just so astounding. If anyone had any question about the intelligence that we don't realize in animals, if they just watch that video for 3 minutes, they realize that we're just scratching the surface.
Yep, terrific. Well, anyway, it was fun talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
If your station is leaving us after this hour and you'd like to comment about my interview with Jane Goodall, you can email me at RebeccaCosta.com or drop me a note on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I love to hear from listeners. And remember, if there's a guest that you'd like to hear from, or you can also forward that to me on our webpage at RebeccaCosta.com. Just click on the contact page and there's a box for you to leave your suggestions. And while you're at the website, be sure to check out our new bookstore. I receive a lot of emails asking me what I'm reading, mainly from parents and teachers and college students across the country. So this year we created a bookstore which shows the books which have had an impact on me. And this past month, I have been reading Dr. Goodall's book, Seeds of Hope, a book which takes us deep into the magical world of plant life. And when you go to our bookstore, click on any book on the site, and it'll take you right over to Amazon. And then anything you order when you land on the Amazon site, whether it's another book, a DVD, a printer cartridge, a hairdryer, anything that you order when you go through our bookstore to Amazon will cause Amazon to make a donation to the Costa Report. That's right. The donation will cost you absolutely nothing. And when you go through our bookstore to Amazon, you have the opportunity to support intelligent, post-partisan broadcasting. Every time you shop at Amazon, you make a donation to the Costa Report. So the next time you're going to get something at Amazon, don't go directly. Go to RebeccaCosta.com first, and then click on any book on our bookstore, and it'll take you straight to Amazon. And then Amazon will keep our staff here at the Costa Report very happy. The Costa Report is one of the last independent news broadcasts left here in the country. and we plan to keep it that way. We are beholding to no sponsor, no media conglomeration, no network, no one. Only to our listeners. And this is the reason that we've been able to bring you quality, in-depth interviews with quality guests like Dr. Goodall 52 weeks a year. So we thank you for your support in advance. And I do want to say that for those of you that are thinking, I am not going to buy a book about magical world of plants, I'm going to tell you it's not like that. It's not like that. Pick up the book, Seeds of Hope. It will really give you an appreciation the same way that the new Disney Bears movie is going to make, what is is it Stifle? That's the bear company that makes the Stife. I think it was Stife. Whatever, I'll tell you all, rush out right now and buy the stock of any toy company making stuffed bears because that is coming your way. I had an opportunity to preview Disney's movie. They sent it out to a number of biologists and scientists, and I had an opportunity to preview the movie, and I will tell you, absolutely fantastic. Take your kids and buy them a stuffed bear. My guest next week is former governor of California, Gray Davis. Davis once faced one of the worst financial crises in California history. So what advice does he have for debt-burdened states and the United States Congress? Find out when we sit down with Gray Davis next week right here on the only news program that puts policy ahead of politics. Now stay tuned for another hour of Straight Talk Radio.